it could be an indication that you are a descendant of a slave, right? And therefore, you could potentially identify as a candidate, if you will, for reparations.
Right.
I think that if we were to do something like that, one suggestion that I've come across is perhaps maybe coming up with some special state law that would define reparations as a public purpose. Right? So what that means is that you have a flow of currency that doesn't violate or pose injury because of foul play. So for an example, right, you had brothers and sisters that were misusing unemployment, and therefore they cut themselves off from it. You had brothers and sisters that was trapping off of PPP loans, right, and they did things like that, and it messed them up. And now, as a result, right, they no longer can use those funds, right? They're documented as pretty much just not being able to be trusted with a program like that.
Right.
And when we've established a history of misappropriating certain programs or our use of certain programs, right? You can't then turn around and just be like, see, such and such don't let us do nothing. They, it's like, well, I'm not worried about what they did or what they're not doing. What were you doing?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because how long are we going to blame everybody else for why we're not doing or why our condition is not changing? If it's available, right? Why don't you just follow the rules that kind of govern that program? If you don't like the program, use your influence to amend the policy.
Right.
That's what people do.
Or get another program or start up another program.
Something to that measure.
Right. Let me, because I want to go back really deep, dive deep on that reparation.
Go
so
ahead.
a lot of people don't understand that some people that was called African Americans at the time had African American slaves. Should I say that again? So when you're talking about reparations, do they family get it too?
Maybe if they was freedmen.
You know what I'm saying? So do they get it also? Do they family get it? And how many people are there? And like you were saying, just to go back into, if you do get a reparation type thing, I'd rather for you to put it back in to the urban style communities versus somebody getting this and somebody getting that. Because if you get these reparations, guess where they're going to go? Back into the other people's pockets. Because the dollar don't stay that far in our communities.
We established that, yeah.
So you might as well, like you say, Adon, go ahead and build these programs up. Let's build some programs to say, okay, well, we can have a center to teach economics to these. Because you learn economics in school, but that's another class you got to take. Ain't nobody taking that class.
I mean, well, you scrape the surface. But what I will say is that a precedent has already been established in law that reparations they're being given out, right? So if you go look at like the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, right? You look at reparations that were paid out because of the Holocaust. Different things have happened.
I have a question.
Go
Was
ahead.
it a monetary thing?
It was a
Or
monetary.
was it like like some people say, no taxes, or it was just straight a cash payment?
It was monetary.
Okay.
Right. It was monetary, and then there are portions of that sustain certain functionalities within a community. Right. So like maybe a museum.
Okay.
Too much to go into right now, right? But there were a lot of things that were established and fortified as a result of.
I was gonna say, didn't the Japanese get reparations?
Well, that's the one. That's the Civil Liberties Act in 1988.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? For what happened at that time. What was that during
World War II.
World War II?
Right. They put them in internment camps.
Right, and they got they were able to get reparations because of that. I want to say it was almost like 20 million or something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it did happen.
Right.
So like in order for that to happen, right, a body of people have to agree that that's okay. Now, when you look at HR 40, which is pretty much the bill for the descendants of Africans to have reparations, right? It's gained some momentum, but we hit roadblocks from time to time, not as swiftly as other communities,
Right.
and progressively over time, more people have. And when I say more people, I'm talking about people that don't identify as Africans or African Americans.
Right.
They have said yes, you know what I'm saying, we should do that. Right? But the advent of this being enforced through public policy, we haven't leaped that hurdle yet.
Okay. Interesting.
You know what I mean? But again, while that's happening, the question still remains, like, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? What are we doing with what we have?
And that's the question.
That's a good question.
Again, a lot of people that I've seen, not saying all people, but it's more of a survival game. It's how do I, maintain? Do I have just enough for an emergency? Things of that nature. I may even say the same thing for myself.
Hold on, say that again.
I said I may even say the same thing for myself.
I got you.
Do you have enough to pass on to, like, my son? These are thoughts that flow through my mind.
I read something that said that I think our annual gross amount of money that we bring into the community, I think it was like 1.8 billion.
You say in the community?
Yeah, like as far as like
into the household, like what you
just as African American, the African American community.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Or maybe it was the amount that we output. It was one of those.
It might be the output.
It might be the output. But we put out so much money. You think about Michael Jordan's which one is it? The ones, the red and black ones?
Yeah, the Chicagos.
The Chicagos.
Mm-hmm.
I seen that shoe selling for like over $350,000.
So let's go to the psychology behind it.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist, but you're talking about people that we're in a country that over the time spent here, you were looked at as less than human.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Constitution 3/5 of a man? All these things you've been looked down upon. You've been told that you weren't anything. You know what I mean? At least that's the narrative. It's not my narrative. It's just the narrative. And you think that plays on, when you look at the old minstrels and the old shows, yes sir, no sir, yes sir, master, I don't know knows better.
Right.
You know what I mean? The blackface, all of this. And I'm not saying this to bring up any hatred. We gonna talk real. That's what was thought of the so-called African American / Negro back in the 1920s and 30s and so on and so forth. That was the norm. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not mad. I can't be mad because I'm here. That was how it was then, and things have evolved in different ways, shapes, and forms. But that was the thought. So you look at things that we think of as high price or expensive. To the person that's getting it, it brings them a sense of
I did it.
A value.
I did it.
It's bringing an external value or bringing a perception of
as opposed to the land acquisition.
land acquisition, properties.
Right.
Right.
So for an example, right, William T. Sherman during the time of the Civil War,
Right.
right? He and obviously, you know, we had brothers.
Come see.
His guy right here.
William Tecumseh Sherman.
Yeah, and obviously we had brothers that fought in the Civil War for the reasons that they fought for.
Right. Every war.
Facts. But what he did was he had confiscated a parcel of land, a strip of land, a coastline that stretched from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way down to the St. Johns River. But if you look this up, it's a special order number 15. And what he did was he was going to appropriate that land to the newly freed blacks. And I think the last time I looked at the estimation, that was probably like well over 400,000 acres of land. Right. And this is where that concept of 40 acres and a mule and all those other kind of stuff, that's what it's rooted in.
Okay.
Okay. Now, there's a strong psychological fact with that, right? You can discern his intentions and say whatever it is that you want to say, right? But what I see with that is that in some shape, form, or fashion, he knew that in order for these people to do what it was that we were doing, right? You know, wasn't trying to give them money, wasn't trying to give them intangibles, right? It was the parcel of land. Right, because with that, you know what I'm saying, what could that do? That could be passed down to the children from generation to generation, which is why, you know, the security that comes with having land, you know what I'm saying, is innumerous.
Food, clothing, and shelter.
Everything, the basic necessities of life are taken care of because of that, or it can be. Now, Andrew Johnson comes and he vetoes that propagation and says, no, we're going to give it back to the quote unquote original owners.
Right. And this would this be considered the southern the southern that fought in the Civil War?
Yes.
Okay.
The Confederacy.
Right. So we know off rip. I mean, well, that is a magnanimous example of why, you know what I'm saying, like why land has the value that it has.
Right.
And why we should, you know, perhaps get a staple in understanding the importance of having land.
Right.
You know, the shoes is not going.
The shoes go where, I mean, a lot of times they call sneaker heads. They get the shoe, may wear it,
maybe,
but they put it in a box. Now I'm not going to knock them 100% because, you know, I was a collector of shoes at one point in time, of action figures, things, comic books, all different types of things, and these things do accrue value. Mm-hmm. So let's not get it twisted and say we, bashing on it. But what we're talking about is like, okay, if something happens to these shoes,
I beg to differ, right? When if your house gets flooded, because of a catastrophe,
you could have insurance on it, have flooding insurance.
Yeah.
Well, who buying insurance for some shoes if they wear outside?
Do they do that?
Yes.
Insurance?
Yeah.
So if you wear them outside, something happened to them, you can. Shoot.
No.
Not insurance. If they get something happens to the shoe,
it's something like renter's insurance. You know, if something happens to your property, then of course they'll give you a deduction or a liability.
But you have to itemize that in the policy.
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you don't go get renter's insurance and it'd be like, well, hey, we're gonna also include your intangibles too. No, you gotta itemize that. Right. Yeah. You know, shoes don't have a tax break because of their depreciation, but houses do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I'm saying? You can get depreciation, you know, tax credits on the things that depreciate within your home.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? You can get fuel credits, you know what I'm saying, on a car because you have to pay taxes on gas. You know, like it's different things in that in that venue that we don't use.
We don't know.
I know we don't know.
Yeah, some of the stuff you're saying now is the first time I've heard of it. I didn't know about that.
You know what I mean? And it's wild, man. It's wild, that we don't utilize the programs that are there.